Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, February 16th, 2006. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. Well, this week it's Bad Beer Tasting Part 2. A group of brave volunteers and I put our palates on the line to help further the cause of better brewing. We continue our evening with the FlavorActive Enthusiast Beer Taste Troubleshooting Kit to taste potential off-flavors in beer and talk about how to fix or avoid them in the first place. I want to dip into the mailbag briefly before we get started. I've gotten a few letters recently on the topic of homebrew and carbonation, so I thought it was worth a mention this week. Rob from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania was one who wrote in. I don't want to pick on Rob, but his letter is a good representation of the kind of correspondence I've been getting lately. Rob says, "My beer doesn't seem to be carbonating in the bottles. The reason I can tell is because I'm using PET bottles, plastic, I guess. They firm up when they carbonate," Rob says, "which is great for beginning brewers. My problem is that the bottles are not firming up, but the beer tastes great. Is there any way to save this batch? Would it make sense to put the beer back into a fermenter and either add more yeast or just wait it out?" Well, I responded to Rob by asking a few questions like, how long has the beer been in the bottles? Have they been stored at fermentation temperatures? Are the bottles sealed properly? And did he remember to prime the beer at bottling time? It's an obvious question, but, you got to ask it. Rob responded back by saying the beer was in the bottles for about a week and a half, and Rob says, "Every day I go downstairs and give them a squeeze. I must admit that after my first attempt with the bottles, I found that my first batch had carbonated in less than a week. I made sure they were tightened as far as they'd go, so the day before yesterday, I reopened them and added another scoop of priming sugar and retightened them." And Rob finishes by saying, "There was a slight hiss as I opened them." Now, there are a couple things to point out. First of all, different batches of beer may carbonate at different levels and at different speeds. And a week and a half is usually not enough time to get a good idea of the final carbonation levels, at least not in my experience, and in the experience of plenty of other homebrewers out there, I'm sure. Rob says he heard a slight hiss when he opened his bottles. So that's a good indication that there is pressure building up inside the bottles and that the yeast is eating the sugar and producing CO2. Then, and again, I don't want to seem like I'm picking on Rob, but he went ahead and added more priming sugar. Well, now this is where we get into the danger zone. Beer that has been over-primed in the bottle can lead to bottle bombs, literally bottles that explode from the excess pressure. Now, we joke about over-priming one of the bottles of our IPA on the last video podcast, but that bottle that we over-primed is sitting in a bathtub in a spare bathroom where it will be away from people and won't cause too much of a mess if it blows up. And we plan to take precautions when we do open that bottle for the show. So I advised Rob to check the bottles frequently, and if they start to get overly carbonated, to chill them as soon as possible to make the yeast go dormant and hopefully stop that carbonation process. But even then, he should probably take care when handling these pressurized bottles. It may be a good thing that they are plastic instead of glass. Now, I get the feeling from reading emails that new brewers are expecting a Budweiser-type level of carbonation from their homebrews. And when they look at their homebrews, when they open their homebrews after a couple of weeks and don't get that, they may think that they're not getting carbonation. But when we talk about carbonation in homebrewed beer, we may just be talking about a good head when you pour and a few bubbles rising off the bottom. Don't expect your porter to look like a Pepsi. And also, we've said many times on this show that patience is one of the most important traits of being a good homebrewer, and it's often the hardest skill to develop. So give your beers a chance to mature, and you'll enjoy the benefits. So good luck to Rob and everybody else who's written in on the topic. Now, one very bright note is that Rob did say that his beer tasted great. So that's excellent. You're on the right track, Rob. Keep on going. Now, on to our second session with the FlavorActive Enthusiast Beer Flavor Troubleshooting Kit. This kit has 3 samples each of 8 powders that give specific off-flavors when added to beer. Now, we used Coors, regular Coors, as our base beer, to add the flavors to because of its, how should we say, subtle flavor profile. And we joke about Coors, but we were comfortable that Coors was brewed well enough that we weren't going to be tasting any off flavors in the beer by itself. So that's one thing in Coors' favor. Now, the American Homebrewers Association was very kind in providing us with the kit, and 3 of my fellow brewers were kind enough to join me as we try bad-tasting beers on purpose. We are continuing an earlier podcast where we're going through the FlavorActive Enthusiast Beer Taste Troubleshooting Kit, kindly supplied to us by the American Homebrewers Association. We thank them very much for helping us out with that and letting us experience this bad beer. I never thought I'd thank somebody for letting me taste baby vomit, but we are going through the kit, and we are experiencing what bad off flavors can happen in homebrew, so that if, knock wood, we'll never have these, but if we do have these flavors in our beer, we'll know what they are, we'll know how to fix them. And joining me is Andy Sparks.
Hey, James. Thanks for having me. I'm the the owner of the homebrew shop, the Home Brewery in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and I've been on several podcasts with you, and I look forward to doing this today.
And also Chris Milam.
Yes, I'm a professional brewer at the Hog House Brewing Company in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and appreciate the invitation.
And half of the brew pubs in Arkansas are represented here tonight. And Steve Wilkes.
Hi, James. Thanks for having me back. I am a home brewer. I buy my extracts and grain from Andy. And you and I have been brewing for a long time, and we now have a couple of DVDs out there. And
that you can find by going to the website. Yeah, and you've seen Steve if you've watched any of our video podcasts. You've seen Steve. So those are the voices that you'll hear, and the flavors that we're going to taste. We're going to start out with we've already mixed it in.
what delicious flavor do you have for us today, James?
Well, on the menu today, Steve, I'm glad you asked. Starting out as an appetizer, we have bacterial growth in the fermentation.
That's a lovely little first course.
Would you like some gravy with that? So we will taste it, and then we'll discuss our first impressions, and then we'll go to the card and see what we're really tasting. Andy was the first to wince.
Yeah, it's not too pleasant putting your nose down in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not.
It tastes like that behind the very front, the primary off flavor that's in this beer. I taste this cooked corn taste.
Yeah? I get some corn out of that. Sure.
It tastes like I opened up the can and just decided to drink it instead of eat it.
Yeah.
Sort of.
That's interesting. I don't know that I ever would have said that, but... Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of a vegetable smell, but...
Is there a little bit of the metallic taste in there too, or is that just me? I've got the crazy flavors. The crazy taste. Maybe that's the Coors coming through.
Yeah. I wasn't going to say that. I don't get the metal. The reason you're hearing no one talk for a moment is because we're all grimacing.
We're all pouring it out.
Yeah, and did I mention that we're mixing these flavors that are supplied with the kit with Coors? I don't know if they've listened to the earlier, but it's not the silver bullet. We're using the full strength Coors. This is I guess the golden bullet. I don't know.
It definitely you get if you're in a lager brewery and or if you have a chance to visit a brewery when they're doing a lager, you get that sulfury smell that's coming off, or you do one at home, you get that sulfury smell right in the very beginning of the primary fermentation. It's reminiscent of walking through that brewery and smelling that primary fermentation, where H2S and some other sulfur compounds are bubbled off with the CO2. And there's a heavy cooked corn flavor that I can't get by. So
I don't know. It's kind of like a vegetable. I don't know. It's kind of like a multi-vegetable kind of, just a vegetative kind of. I don't know.
It's veg-all.
It's Vegemite for our Australian listeners.
Yeah. And we have a few. I was going to say we go down under, but I don't know. I don't know.
That's only on the cable version. Oh man, that's nasty. I really don't like that flavor.
Okay.
The corn, I get a lot of corn, and then it's kind of sour, and it's kind of flat in my mouth. You know, it's again going back to the first podcast when the real Coors tasted kind of bright and happy and real. This is like, ugh. That's my word for it.
Ugh.
bright and happy Coors.
Well, it is. It's bright and happy. That's
the new slogan. It's not the golden bullet. It's the bright and happy.
Well, you'll love this description.
Okay.
The flavors in this beer are, is it Indole, Indole?
I've never known how to pronounce that one. I've just always said Indole, and if I feel a little fancy, you'll do Indole or a little Latin. I don't know.
Well, whatever you call it, it's described as a fecal farmyard character.
There you go.
Barnyard.
Not just the farmyard, the fecal farmyard. And DMS, a character reminiscent of cooked corn. So,
because DMS actually, if everybody should know the smell of DMS. It's called dimethyl sulfide. If you ever see the actual name of it, it is present in under malted barley. So if you're making a lager, especially, but it also in some ales, if you're using some perhaps a British ale malt. With those lower modified malts, you get this DMS that will actually form during the boil. And if you don't allow your boil to vent off, you're going to trap that very volatile chemical in your boil, and it's going to end up in your final beer. And there's a pretty famous, pretty big brewery in Latrobe. I don't know if I should mention the name, but in Latrobe there's a brewery that the primary flavor in their beer is actually DMS. So if you like that particular beer, then you most likely like DMS. And then beers made with obviously flake maize or any sort of corn would have a high DMS level too. But definitely that smell that everybody associates when they're homebrewing, right when they start to boil, that's typically DMS.
Well, it says, the card says, and if you haven't listened to the past podcast where we're going through this, with each off flavor, it comes with a card that has the categories of problem, what can I do with the batch, how do I prevent this happening again, and other stuff. That's the other stuff is telling you that it's usually where they tell you you're either tasting baby vomit or fecal farmyard characters. Problem. It says if your beer tastes like this, it's been spoiled by growth of bacteria during fermentation. These most likely belong to a group of bacteria that are sometimes called coliforms. As in, like, fecal coliforms.
E. coli.
Yeah, I've had that. That's not a picnic, that E. coli thing. They can include, Obesum bacterium proteus.
That's good. That's exactly right.
Hey, all right. Sight reading. Thank you. And Rhanella, Aquatilus. No, Aquatils. Well, get the book. What? Yeah. So bad you can't pronounce it. What can I do with a batch? Destroy it. There's little you can do to improve its flavor. How can I prevent this from happening again? Basically, clean your stuff, sterilize your equipment, replace your contaminated yeast, and solution to contaminated water lies in using a good quality supply of potable water sterilized before use by boiling. Do not dilute cooled wort with cold, unsterilized water. So what I've seen in some, on the web, instructions on how to make beer they mix their cooled wort with water that hasn't been boiled or sterilized, and would this be one of the dangers of that?
Well, if you're actually dealing with distilled water, which distilled through the process of distilling, you end up with only the H2O molecule. You don't have all these other molecules in there. Then yes, that would be okay because you're pouring sterile water into the beer. You got to worry about oxidation a little bit, but again, it's homebrew, and you can typically pour it in such a way that it's not going to splash around and cause a big oxidation problem, any more so than re-racking into a secondary. Now, if you went out and you just bought your store brand natural spring water, you just turned on your tap and you poured that into your wort, then yeah, you're going to end up with some problems. And if you do have some E. coli coming into your wort, then you might want to call your health department and wonder why the water system's not
yeah, and don't mix up the pipes between your toilet and your kitchen sink, I guess.
Absolutely.
But I picked on Alton Brown from Good Eats from a episode he did on homebrew. He went to the store and bought 7 pounds of ice and put it in the bottom of his primary fermenter, and then poured his hot wort on top of that to cool it off. Now, if you're not sure of the quality of the ice that you're getting, there could be some stuff like this in there.
Absolutely. I mean, the bacteria, if it were in the ice, would simply go dormant when it's frozen, wouldn't necessarily die. So yeah, once it warms up, obviously those bacteria are just as happy as the yeast going after that sugar.
And I would assume that while any ice plant would be a pretty clean place, it's not sterile, and there is bacteria in there, whether it's a lot or a little. It still potentially could affect your brew.
And I've been to places where they store ice. They make it somewhere else, they bring it into this region, and then they use forklifts and stuff to load it into trucks and to carry it out. And, along that supply chain, there's plenty of places for bags to get punctured or contaminated in some way. And, do they ever clean the ice machines out in front of the grocery stores?
Is there slime in the ice machine?
So and you're thinking, well, you put it in your drink, you put it in your Coke. Well, it doesn't sit in the Coke in a hospitable environment for growth for several days.
And there's preservatives in Coke. No preservatives in beer.
So there we go. Have we beaten this one? Are we ready to go on?
Please.
Yes, no more barnyard. Very pleasant way of saying how it really tastes.
Fecal barnyard.
I can't see the fecal part. I definitely smell the kind of the vegetable corn kind of thing. But anyway.
Okay. We'll rinse and we'll be right back. Okay, this is insufficient boiling of wort.
Yeah, that one's terrible.
Yes.
Oh.
What is that?
That might be one of the worst things I've ever smelled in my life.
That's just nasty.
Yeah. I don't even want to taste
Hard to
it.
describe.
I will, but I don't want to.
Well, what is it? I mean, we'll look at the card in a minute, but...
Well, it tastes... It actually, the smell... The first smell I get off of it is lemon, but really nasty lemon. And, oh, man, I can't...
I don't know. It reminds me of like wet cardboard or a rag that's been wet and sat for a while.
A dish rag. An old dish rag that you've left in the sink, and you clean some milk up with it.
Stuff growing on it.
And
I'm telling you, it's sulfury and
yeah.
Ooh.
It does taste like molded cardboard.
Yeah.
That wiped up milk.
Yeah. Oh, that's just foul.
I don't know. I'm not good I guess I'm not good at connecting the verbal center of my brain to the flavor. Do you need the bucket?
No, that's really bad.
Have some course.
Oh, I've got some. I'm looking forward to this.
But I can't.
Almost you said earlier cooked vegetable, but this smells like if you were to throw in a medley of vegetables, like you were mentioning. I mean, cauliflower and broccoli.
Yeah, really sad cauliflower and cabbage.
Yeah, and just boiled it, and you could smell it a mile away.
Oh,
that's what it smells like up close.
Okay. Other stuff. No, this will back this will.
Underboiled wort.
This is insufficient boiling of wort. The flavors in this beer are isobutyraldehyde, a grainy nut-like character. When they describe it like that, it sounds good.
Mucilix.
It's flavored with isobutyraldehyde, a grainy nut-like character. And DMS, a character reminiscent of cooked corn, which we've had, and dimethyl trisulfide, an onion-like flavor.
Yeah, I'd get some onion out of that. I'd go there. Rotten onion.
Vegetable.
Yeah.
So this is what the Cro-Magnon man's beer tasted like before they boiled it?
It says, if your beer tastes like this, your wort has been insufficiently boiled. What we're going to do with this batch, you may be able to blend this beer with another beer that's free of off flavors to produce something that's quite acceptable.
Or to ruin two beers.
To make it not so bad. An alternative is to add a small amount, about 5 milligrams per liter of sulfite to the beer. This can help mask the grainy flavor. However, take care, some people are sensitive to sulfites, particularly if they have a history of asthma. So
you kill your friend.
Yeah, you can save your beer but kill your friend.
Do you have your inhaler?
How do I prevent this from happening again? Make sure you achieve a vigorous rolling boil. Simmering the wort isn't good enough, and make sure you boil for the correct time, not too short.
Yeah, that's a good point. We joke about not boiling your wort, and the first thing you think of is, we boiled it 10 minutes or 20 minutes, or at least I did. Really, it's a problem of saying, wow, I want to do 5 gallons of beer, or I normally do 5, now I'm going to do 10. And you just, for some weird reason, think you can use your kitchen stove, or perhaps the same turkey fryer at the same setting you've always used, when you really need to turn up the volume and really pump out some BTUs to really get that boiling with higher volumes of beer that you plan on making.
Now, would this be a problem with extracts? Because the extract guys have already boiled the wort, and then they've taken the water out of it, essentially. Right. So would this be a problem with extracts, or is this just an all-grain problem?
You could still pick up a few problems in underboiled extract, especially with oxidation. If you don't get a good, vigorous boil, then you're going to leave some of the oxygen molecules that are going to get eaten up pretty quick by really joined to other molecules pretty fast. So yeah, you would have a problem with underboiled extracts, definitely.
And how do I prevent this from happening again? Oh, okay, I've read that. All right. Had some beers. I've had some beers. I'm starting to repeat myself. See, that's sticking around.
Mm-hmm.
Is anybody else?
Yeah, it's sticking around.
I may have to eat some bread to.
Well, the truth is there are actually some people that advocate things like no boil kits out there, and I've always been a firm believer in a vigorous boil for 60 minutes. 60 minutes is the minimum you should boil a beer for. Mm-hmm. Just to make sure it's thoroughly pasteurized and make sure you get all the utilization you out of your hops. Otherwise, what's the point of having a hop schedule of 60 and 30? Because you gotta boil the hops for 60 minutes to get all the bitterness out of them. So, but I would shy away from the no beer or the the no boil or sometimes they use a hot water, a boiling water mixed with syrup or extract, and then pitch from there. Mm-hmm. And those both are, I would consider, inadequate procedures.
Sure. This is if I can make a quick note, what I do on a lot of the tours when I give them is I tell the story about how beer typically or really hasn't changed all that much from when it was first imagined, thousands of years ago. We still boil the wort. We still mix in some sort of sugar source, and we add, back then, of course, it was wild yeast and bacteria, but now we control it and add in the yeast that we want. And it really hadn't changed much. And they say if we had a magic time machine and we could go grab, say, an Egyptian who was making the Pharaoh some beer and brought him back today and introduced him in a brewery today, he would look around, maybe not understand our language, but he would look around and start to figure out that this is a brewery and this is how you make beer. And it's you've always brewed beer in a way that, you've always boiled wort in order to make beer. So why would you really not want to boil it now? Unless you're going to invent what I think if beer was invented today, it would be the scientific drink that I guess we wouldn't recognize as beer, but it would probably be made in such a way that you mix enzymes with some malted sugar, some sort, and it extracts it and breaks it up, and we mix in some ultraviolet lights, and we throw in hop oils instead of boiling our hops to get our bitterness and aroma, and then we end up with this flavored alcoholic beverage. Not beer.
Now, you're probably thinking the same thing I'm thinking, Steve. In our last...
Have another Coors. You know what you're thinking?
No. Well, that may be in the back of my mind. But in our last video podcast, we boiled the hops for a full hour, a full hop schedule, but we only boiled the extract for 15 minutes to sterilize it. So, and the test beers that we did, where we did that same thing only on a smaller scale, those tasted good.
They tasted great.
And we got none of this stuff.
No, not at all.
So we did boil long enough, I think 15 minutes on the extract part of it, where we did get our hop utilization in the test batch. And we did boil for 15 minutes to sterilize the extract. So it'll be interesting, to see how our 6-pack of IPA turns out. That's sitting in the other room and ready to rack into the secondary. I wonder if we'll taste some of this stuff, or I don't know either.
But for the listeners, again, it's important to note that it's not necessarily how long you boil. 5 minutes of a boil is going to kill just about everything that's in there. It's the vigor of the boil. It's whether or not you're able to knock out that oxygen. It's whether or not you're able to not build up these chimneys, whether you just have little eddies or whatever of heat in one area, differential of temperature. It's so that you get everything the same temperature. It's very vigorous, very bubbly. Then you've done a good job of boiling, whether it's 15 minutes or for an hour.
Yeah, we were, since it was such a small batch, we were able to achieve a very vigorous boil on the stovetop. So
yeah,
definitely helps.
Well, there's a spot right after you get it boiling really good where you see the proteins kind of precipitate and they kind of get these little flakes and stuff in there. I don't know, is that a sign that you've boiled it past that point, or that you're getting it hot enough? Or?
Oh, that's definitely good. This is the hot break. That's definitely a good sign that you're boiling very well. You also, you want to see the bubbles forming. A lot of professional breweries are built a little bit different than what you would use on your kitchen stove, because your stock pot is flat, and maybe you should turn your pot every once in a while when you're brewing, just to make sure that any sort of chimneys that are building up, they're in different areas of the boil. But at breweries, a lot of kettles are built where the bottom is at an angle, where you turn on a side jacket and one of the bottom jackets, so you get this nice uneven heatedness that actually starts to stir the wort and make sure it's good, vigorous, stirred boil.
Yeah, I was really impressed when I first started homebrewing, and I went out to the home brewery, and Andy was making a batch of beer, and you had a boil going that I thought was going to rock the house. It was just like, my gosh. And I still had that mental picture in my head of what a boil should look like. And I remember talking to you and I'm sorry I've forgotten the other fellow's name that was there.
Steve.
But he said that to me. I mean, what we're talking about right now, he says, yeah, you got to get it rolling just like this, you really want to see all that happen. And so I didn't know why, but he told me that, and I thought that was good advice, and apparently it was.
And that was outside with a keg.
Yeah.
On a propane burner.
Yeah, it's nice to have a pot with enough volume so that you can bring it to a vigorous boil and not have to worry about the boil over. And I mean, really, you're walking that fine line because you want to get it hot enough so that it does cause the vigorous boil. But that is at the start. That's where you can get a boil over just like that. So you just can't let it alone. You got to stay right over it until you get it to where you want it, and then it's rolling. And then you can back off a little bit.
The secret for the boil over, if you are a home brewer and you experience the boil over, if you have a 6 gallon pot and you're making 5 gallons of beer, right at the hot break where that foam starts to form, take a handful of your hops, or I guess since you're making a small batch, you can't really take a handful, but take a few of your hops. On a professional scale, you can do a handful. Take a few hops and just throw them in there, and the actual oils will come out, and they'll break up that head, and it'll stop your boil over. It kind of prevents you from having, well, in my case, hose it down, but in your case, adding ice or pouring some water in. But yeah, just throw a few hot pellets in there. It'll break up that foam that's forming and help break that boil over. A little off topic, but...
Well, no, man, it's all good. Whatever gets good information for people to help them make better beers, that's what we're all about.
That's why we're here.
Plus, having a good excuse to drink beers.
And if you do make better beer, I would like to taste
it. Send your better beers to Chris Milam, Hog House, and Andy. Put it down. Put the bad beer down.
Why do you keep doing that to yourself?
We're only going to do this once. I want to make sure I learn from it.
Learn from your mistakes. All right, but we've only got 2 more to go. We'll take a break, and we'll come back. Okay, here we go, round 3 this evening. And we've done, we're taping these 2 episodes together, and I think some are, it's like a marathon, and some guy, a couple are stretching for the finish line.
A couple of us are looking for a car.
You need to take the subway. Okay, poor yeast health.
Poor yeast health. Unhealthy yeast.
Unhealthy yeast.
Oh my God.
For those of you out in Radio Land, Andy is about to fall out.
Oh, man.
What is that?
Well, that's not pleasant. That's not the worst one I've tasted, but that's not pleasant.
Mm.
You know what strikes me about all of these is that they all seem to make the beer kind of flat in your mouth. That seems to be a common characteristic across everyone that we've tasted. That they just, all the maltiness, the kind of bigness that would be in your mouth, even in Coors. I mean, it even flattens out of Coors. So
there's no flavor in Coors.
It's a subtly flavored beer.
Well, you should probably point out that when you drop the capsule into the pitcher and stir it up, it is a powder, and therefore it causes the beer to basically fizz up quite a bit and create a big head, kind of like if people pour salt in a beer or something. So it may be venting off a lot of the CO2 so that by the time it gets in our cups, it tastes a little flatter. But like we said before, I think the pH thing on some of these ones that are kind of acidic will also give you that strange mouthfeel effect.
Okay, shall we go to the card, or do you have any guesses on the flavors?
Waxy is the only thing I can come up with.
Waxy.
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 Okay.
Chewed into a candle or something.
The wax lips.
The wax lips, yes.
The flavors in this beer are ethyl.
Fred
Ethyl hexanoate.
Mm-hmm.
Is that close?
It's close. Very close.
An apple-like character. H2S, a smell reminiscent of hard-boiled eggs.
Rotten hard-boiled eggs.
And what would that be? H2S. What would be the name for that?
Hydrogen disulfide.
Okay. And ethanethiol. Have you heard of ethanethiol?
Yeah.
Oh, and you'll love this one, Steve. A character reminiscent of drains.
Yeah. Nice. That's what I'm smelling.
Like those grain smells.
I had a little backed up sewer problem at my house over the holidays.
Not grains, but drains.
Right. No, you had an ethanol.
Yeah,
Yeah, ethanethiol.
Yikes. Yeah. That's just plain funky.
Yeah, it's very odd.
If your beer tastes like this, your yeast is sick.
It's dying.
Aside from producing an abnormal balance of regular flavors, this also leads to a reduced rate of elimination of sulfur compounds produced in fermentation. What can I do with this batch? You may be able to blend this beer with another beer. Okay, another blending. See the other. If the beer is high in alcohol, greater than 6% per volume, alcohol per volume, or by volume, you might try storing it for a while after bottling. This won't affect the intensity of the apple flavor, but it will help to get rid of the sulfury characters, or the apple flavor. How do I prevent this from happening again? Concentrate on the basics. Use a good quality yeast. Make sure that it's in good condition and not too old. Pitch the right quantity into the fermenter. Be sure to aerate the wort before pitching. Crop the yeast at the right time, not too late, not too early. What do they mean by that?
Cropping is actually the withdrawing the yeast from the beer. If you're using, for instance, when it settles at the bottom and you decant off and you take the yeast off, then that's the cropping.
So if you've got a fancy cylindrical,
very nice system set up, then you can just pull it right off the bottom of the cone. That would be the cropping of the yeast.
Doesn't mean you know how to use it if you got one. And store the yeast in a cool place for the shortest possible time prior to the next fermentation. So that's, I mean, you got to have healthy yeast to have a good fermentation.
Absolutely. This is one of those, this is a good example of how you should, if you're going to repitch in home brewing, maybe you want to limit it to 5-6 generations, because you're going to pick up contamination every time. If you're doing anything to your yeast, or if you're not able to control the fermentation and you stress the yeast, then that stressed yeast is going on to try to work some more, and then every time it's poor health, it gets sicker. So yeast is a living organism, and it does need nutrients to survive. And if you're not giving it the right nutrients, then I guess this is what you'll end up with.
Andy, you're awful quiet over there.
This is just disgusting.
Steve?
I just echo his thoughts. I think the wax comment was right on target. It just kind of, I don't know, it's like soup gone bad,
Mm-hmm.
It just...
Kind of a rubber band or Band-Aidy kind of, plasticky kind of.
Now, have I heard autolysis described as being rubbery?
Yes. Autolysis would be an example of this. What happens with autolysis, for the listeners who don't know, is that the yeast cell dies and it excretes all of its innards. I don't know what all the cellular material that's inside the yeast actually is excreted into your beer. That's autolysis. And autolysis, when it happens by pour yeast. If you heat up your beer, it can happen if you leave your beer exposed to the yeast, say, for 2 months. It's sitting in there, then a lot of that yeast is going to die, and because it's starving, and what happens with dead things, they decompose and goes into your beer. So yes, this would be a good example of what autolysis would taste like in beer.
And it's interesting, John Palmer, in our interview on lagers, said that he had tasted a beer that had autolyzed, I guess, and he said that I said, what did it taste like? And he said, when you open a packet of soup. And didn't you say soup, Steve?
Yeah, it did. It just tasted like nasty soup. I can't articulate it very much better than that. This is just, it's kind of lemony, but in a bad, I don't know.
And I seem to be the least sensitive in the group as far as tasting, because when it's cold, I could drink this. I wouldn't say it's good, but Steve and Andy are like making faces and just can't stand it. But when the beer warms up, I really taste it more. And I guess my taste threshold is just, would it be higher or lower? I guess it's higher tolerance.
Higher, right. Yeah. Higher tolerance to these compounds.
So if you're that way and you're not getting it, let it sit, let it warm up.
Absolutely.
And then you start to get it.
And hold it on your tongue for a while. Your body temperature is pretty high compared to the temperature of the beer. Holding it on your tongue for 10 seconds, swallowing, and then trying to get those aromas after you breathe out. Trying to capture those on your senses is really a good way to really taste it.
Yeah, I'm getting more of the apple now. A lot more of the apple. It's like a Jolly Rancher candy almost.
Jolly Rancher gone bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting that green apple.
A lot more. It's just it's almost exactly like a Jolly Rancher sour apple candy to me. Maybe that's just me.
You can certainly taste the green apple in there, but there are other flavors going on too. So it's not just the green apple. There's these weird kind of licoricey kind of rubbery kind of flavors. But it is a good point that if you suspect there's a problem with your beer, go ahead and leave it out for 10, 15 minutes, let it come to room temperature, and then kind of analyze it again, see if you don't help you find what it is you're looking for. You may have kind of feel like, maybe there's a problem with it, but that might help you discover it by leaving it out.
Yeah, if your beer's got to be cold for you to enjoy it,
you're in trouble. That's actually a test that you do in a professional environment. Is you try to age the beer, and at 90 degrees, every day is like 2 weeks of a regular beer. So if you hold it that long and you shake it and you treat it really bad, and then you go back and taste it in a few days, it's really like a month old now, and so you can get a hint of what it's going to taste like down the road. And that's how you test your beer to say, how well will my beer taste 3 months down the road? Should I pull it off the shelf, or should I, leave it out there for the consumer?
Wow, that's interesting. Steve, only one more. You can make it, buddy. You can make it.
I hope so. I'll tell you what, though, on a more serious note, I think that if I had one of these kits, so I have it at my home, and it's just me, and I'm going to learn how to do this, I would not sit here and try to do a whole run of these in one night, because 2 or 3 in my palate's not happy. I mean, first couple of them was kind of fun. And this is a job now, folks. So I would take it slow, and maybe I don't know, maybe do 1 or 2, but it's just overwhelming. And
or I would imagine that a lot of these are going to be sold to clubs, like you've purchased one for the homebrew club that's based in your store.
Right, and they actually they sent us a note about that and kind of made a special effort to appeal to homebrew clubs and try and get them to do this. And I think it's a great idea for homebrew clubs to help the whole club. After going through this, when they describe flaws in beers, they'll be talking about the same flavors. And, because sometimes people are saying one thing and then another person's over there thinking, I don't think that's what that's called. I think that's the, diacetyl or whatever. And so it's nice to get everybody on the same page. So I hope homebrew clubs use this.
Yeah. So maybe you could stretch it out over several meetings.
Yeah, and it's definitely a group-oriented kind of thing. You couldn't really do this by yourself because you'd end up with a 12-ounce beer that really sucks.
Actually, very good point. Now that I think about it.
You go through almost a 12-pack by yourself, and it's all nasty.
You might never drink again.
We don't want that. Okay, one more to go. We'll rinse, and we'll come back. Okay, now, boy, I can smell this one. This is the last one. We've saved the best for last, and I just hope my little studio airs out before I have to come in and work tomorrow morning. This is use of old or degraded hops. Gentlemen, cheers.
Cheers.
Over the lips.
Watch out, Andy's tummy. Here it comes. Oh.
Oh, boy, I just don't know.
Yes.
Weren't they doing this at Abu Ghraib?
That's terrible.
Beer analysis?
Torture.
Oh.
This tastes like...
This reminds me of my laundry hamper when I was in college.
Well, it reminds me of blue cheese or blue cheese, gorgonzola, something like that. It's been left out for a few hours.
Mm-hmm.
It seems very, very strong in the aroma, but the taste is, maybe it'll taste more strong, but I don't taste it as much as the smell.
Right. Well, I guess with that, you should say that, you're telling us 4 flavors, you taste those 4 things, and that's it. Everything else is an aroma. I guess you could add mouthfeel to your flavors, maybe that's 5. But, so everything really is a smell. I mean, if you can smell it in the glass, you can smell it after it warms up on your tongue afterwards, and you really get that old, degraded cheese flavor out of this aroma. That's old, nasty cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily, I mean, I heard you say blue cheese. I mean, blue cheese can actually smell pretty good.
Oh,
but
yeah.
there's that kind of cheese that sat in the fridge for a while, and it's got that kind of gooey part to it.
Yeah.
Whether it's blue or whatever.
Right. No, you're right.
Or orange.
And don't get me, because I like blue cheese. Yeah. But that's just the first flavor that I smelled. But you're right. It's really more like blue cheese you left in the fridge for 2 months. Yeah.
Cheese that's kind of gone funky.
Okay, here we go. And I was joking, Andy's my homebrew supply guy, so I was saying, Andy, if I recognize this from any of my homebrews, you're in trouble. But no, none of my beers have smelled or tasted like that. So the flavor in this beer is isovaleric acid.
Yes.
A cheesy flavor, which reminds some people of sweaty socks. So you got the cheese, I got the dorm laundry thing. The flavor of isovaleric acid in beer depends on pH. Flavor intensity increases at low pH value. For this reason, adjustment of beer pH by blending with another beer can prove effective in dealing with this problem. So, if your beer tastes like this, you've used old or degraded hops or hop products to make it. You may be able to blend this beer with another. Avoid using hops or hop products that have been stored for more than 2 years under ideal conditions. It says 4 degrees Celsius and vacuum packed, or less time under non-ideal conditions, higher temperatures, and or access to air. Check the hops before use. They should smell aromatic, not cheesy.
Not cheesy.
I'll have the cheesy hops. The risk of problems is also related to the amount of hops used, so be especially careful about your choice of hop when brewing highly hopped beers.
Absolutely. There's a large brewery just up the road here, very international. They actually age their hops. Some of them, not all of them, of course. They buy up the world's best hops, and then they age them. A little bitter, but not too much. But anyways, they actually age them, and I mean, I dare you to say that I taste the isovaleric acid in their beer. But if you age it under the correct conditions, like you mentioned, cold, vacuum sealed, then aging must benefit that brewery somehow.
Yeah. What's the best way to store hops? So you've got some hops, I don't know, maybe some pelletized hops, and you only used a half an ounce. How long can you keep them, and how should you store them?
Well, in ideal conditions, you have a vacuum sealer. Same sort of thing you vacuum seal clothes with, or you saw an infomercial on. If you have some sort of kitchen vacuum sealer, that would be ideal. If not, put it in a baggie. Plastic is gonna, It's porous. It's going to let in oxygen, so over time it's still going to turn. Obviously, try to squeeze out as much oxygen as you can. Put it in your freezer. Let it go down to near freezing temperatures. All those sort of conditions are going to help. The cooler the hops, maybe it'll last. Maybe you'll get 30% loss instead of 50% loss over 6 months. So cooler conditions, trying to seal it off as best you can, are the ideal situations. And of course, make beer. So
just don't let it get old.
Make beer.
Yeah, use them. That's the best strategy. Was there anything? I think we're anxious. We're anxious to get to some good beers, and hopefully I've got some good home brews in the fridge that we can rinse our palates with. Any last words? Would you recommend the kit? I mean, we've made a big deal out of saying how horrible of an experience this is, but would you recommend this kit?
I would, definitely. I think it's been a great experience. I mean, it's kind of gross after a while, but yeah, there's flavors here that I have tasted a little bit here and there, and it's like, oh, okay, that's what that is. And so, it's very, very helpful.
I say if you want to commit time and effort to being a great home brewer and to really enjoying the hobby that you have, absolutely get this kit, because it will help you identify where there may be slight problems in your brewing system, and you'll be able to fix them very quickly and produce really great beers.
Yeah, I appreciate the fact that they, with every sample, they give you some tips on how to improve and what might be causing that. Because a lot of people can identify a flaw in a beer, but not everybody can say how to fix it. And so I think this will be helpful for people that they're just starting out to try and fix some of the problems they're having.
Now it is pricey. I mean, with the Homebrewers Association membership, you get $50 off. So the price is it's still $150 for the kit. So it would be maybe you split it. Get like we have 4 folks in this room, so you divide it up between 4. It's not so bad.
And you get you should point out too that you get 3 tastings. So it's like 3 for the price of 1.
Yeah.
And it's a lot cheaper than if you were to go to an actual sensory analysis or sensory tasting course. And perhaps if you do desire to be a beer judge or to actually learn how to taste beer, this would be an excellent start. I mean, I couldn't think of anything better than buying this kit for starting off.
I don't know, how many people do you think would be the most people you could have on a single flight? Like we just did, there was 4 of us, and we each pretty much drank most of the beer we got. We got a couple ounces each, and a couple of them we didn't finish just because they were so gross. But you couldn't do a whole lot more people. You could maybe do 6 people, but that would be stretching it. So you need to think about that. But yeah, it's a great idea for a homebrew club. Spend a little of the money, or even just have a special one-off session where everybody that wants to do it kicks in a little bit and goes in together. Because maybe not everybody in the club wants to do it, but yeah, it'd be a great way to get ready for studying for BJCP or anything like that.
Yeah, and if nothing else, just as a home brewer, it's a pure hobby with me. But going through this taste test has made me really think hard about my procedures. Just, I mean, as I've been sitting here doing it, tasting this, I'm going, okay, am I boiling enough? Am I, have I kept those hops too long? I haven't made beer in a few months. Are these hops any good? And things like that. So this has been very, very educational for me.
Very good. Well, again, much thanks to the American Homebrewers Association for helping us out with providing us with the kit. And thanks to Cindy Jones. And it's been it's been an experience. I can't say that it's been a whole lot of fun, but it's been very educational. And we hope that everybody who's listening has gotten some things out of it too. It's not just a bunch of guys drinking bad beer and saying this is awful. It's a bunch of guys saying this is awful and then talking about what you can do to avoid it. So that's it. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate you. Thanks again to Andy Sparks, Chris Milam, and Steve Wilkes for joining me for the evening of bad taste. Now, we actually did have fun, and we did taste some good homebrews afterwards, so that was good. So thanks once again to the American Homebrewers Association also for their continued support of this podcast. I'm a member, by the way, and you should be too. Now, next week I hope to have a report from our man in Colorado, Brian Warren, as he fills us in on the goings-on at the International Mead Festival in Boulder. Brian came back with some great interviews with mead makers big and small from this country and from around the world, so you'll want to tune in for that. A lot of good advice for making your own mead at home. Now, I'm done with the editing of the all-grain DVD, stepping into all-grain, and it may be on its way to the replicator by the time you hear this, so one last chance for those who have not ordered the pre-release version. February 21st will be the last day you can buy the DVD-R version online for $10. So, if you're interested and you haven't bought one yet, go to basicbrewing.com/grain for more details. That's basicbrewing.com/grain. And thank you very much to everybody who's already purchased the DVD and provided feedback, very valuable feedback. It's good to know that Steve and I were on the right track from the beginning. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say hey, write to james@basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. And we're having a little trouble with our email form now, so you can email me directly to james@basicbrewing.com if the form's not back up there yet. And if you're wanting to get into home brewing for the first time while you're on our site, you can check out our initial DVD, our first DVD, Basic Brewing, Introduction to Extract Home Brewing. We'll walk you through the process step by step. You can see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVD. And if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order it online. Well, that's all until next week. Until then, thanks for listening. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time. So long.